Chapter 1586 Silver Armor. Late at night, around Fog Valley, the warships of Columbia and the East China Sea region are on daily patrol. On Columbia's warship, it is freezing cold outside, but the temperature inside is comfortable. Daily patrols have been going on for 2 years. Except for the last Fog Valley riot, it has been calm most of the time. Day after day of patrolling has already made the Navy on these warships accustomed to boring life. So in the middle of the night, they gathered together as usual, using rum and Texas Hold'em to pass the time. In the middle of the 21st century, warships have developed to a very advanced level, especially Columbia, which has the world's strongest navy. Their warships not only have powerful combat capabilities, but also have an extremely comfortable internal environment. Life here is like heaven compared to ordinary people after the end of the world. The shouting of drunkards, the shouting after winning the gambling card, and the sound of smashing cups are symphonic. In the control room, the first mate and the driver on duty dared not slack off. They had to follow the established patrol route to inspect the foggy area. There might be some dangers in this process. Among them, there might be a collision with the warships of the East China Sea region. The first mate sat on the chair, his cold eyes like a bald eagle. He ordered his crew members, "Cheer up. Don't slack off. This damn place. You don't know when an accident will happen." "Sir, Lieutenant Colonel, are you referring to the attack that happened some time ago?" an officer asked. What he was talking about was the attack on Fog Valley arranged by Deng Shintong. It was because of that attack that the Columbia Ocean Fleet and the East China Sea region sent a large number of troops to surround the entire Star Island. In the end, they found out that it was not from Star Island itself, but a secret attack by an unknown force. The first mate pressed down the brim of his hat and said coldly, "The world has changed, and it is full of dangers. Even in the deep sea where we once roamed, there are beings that cannot be provoked. The current Columbia Navy can only dominate the broken offshore areas." The crew shrugged their shoulders and didn't care about it. As long as they can still live a relaxed and happy life, they don't care about other things at all. But suddenly, a red light lit up on the huge display, and a rapid alarm sounded suddenly. "Warning! Warning!" The first mate's expression immediately became nervous, and the smiles on everyone's faces disappeared in an instant. "What's going on?" The first mate rushed over. The crew member looked at the screen and quickly zoomed in. "It seems that an abnormal flying object has been discovered. Please wait." After a moment, the camera kept zooming in, and they saw a dark, slowly rising above the Star Island. The camera zoomed in again, but it was limited by the influence of the fog, and could not see what it was. The muscles on the first mate's face twitched, and he said without hesitation, "Send out a drone for investigation immediately." At this moment, a deafening sound suddenly came from outside. Boom! In the dark night, a thunder rang out in the sky, like a sharp sword cutting through the sky and illuminating the night. In this brief period of light, a group of figures rushed out from the bottomless abyss of the Star Island Mist Valley at high speed. The light of lightning shone on their armor with a strong metallic texture, revealing their huge bodies. They were a group of humanoid creatures, all wrapped in thick armor, with thick tails growing behind them. The first to fly high into the sky were 5 humanoid creatures wearing silver armor. If Zhang Yi saw them here, he would definitely feel particularly familiar, because their appearance was very similar to the gatekeepers of the underworld he had seen at the beginning. After the silver armor appeared, a group of creatures wearing black and white armor appeared behind them. After them, a dense group of similar creatures in cyan armor flew out in a strict hierarchy. They rushed out from the underground of the Fog Valley of Qingdao, stood in the sky, and arranged in an orderly military formation. It was like a powerful and disciplined army. The warship immediately sent out more than a dozen drones to fly into the depths of the thick fog to see their appearance clearly. In the military formation, a creature in black and white armor just glanced over here. He suddenly raised his right hand, and an invisible shockwave swept across, instantly smashing all the drones. And such a scene has been transmitted to the warship through the drone. The first mate was completely numb. "What the hell are those things?" Report to headquarters immediately. The first-level alarm sounded on the warship, and the main gun of the warship slowly rose and aimed at the direction of Qingdao. Among the 5 silver armors, the leader just waved his hand cleanly, and in an instant, a commander in black and white armor led dozens of soldiers in cyan armor to quickly fly towards the warship. The battleship's main gun had just been raised and was about to intimidate those strange creatures. But the creature in black and white armor, who looked like the leader of the army, pulled out a very strange weapon from his back, and the air slashed. Silently and invisible, when the distance between the two was still 5 or 6 kilometers, the warship was neatly cut in the middle. This super warship that Columbia spent more than $1 billion to build was like tofu in front of the black and white armor. The ship was completely in chaos at this time. The aliens put on their combat uniforms and used the flying devices on their clothes to quickly evacuate the sinking warship and wanted to fight back against these strange creatures. But the dozens of blue-armored warriors rushed over like locusts and slaughtered them quickly, like crushing worms. On the warship, the most powerful lieutenant colonel captain with a supernatural power index of 9,300 points was originally carrying a giant cross to protect his warship. But a blue-armored warrior simply rushed towards him and rushed past him. Puff! The captain's chest was directly torn apart, and large pieces of flesh and internal organs were torn off in an instant, leaving only a thin half of flesh connected to the body. Ka! A large amount of blood spurted out of his mouth, and his eyes quickly lost focus. Originally, as a captain, he would be like a lone hero, fighting the enemy to the end to protect the warship. Unexpectedly, even the most inconspicuous blue-armored warrior on the other side could kill him in seconds. And such a scene did not only happen on their ship. Around Qingdao, there were at least 5 warships from Columbia and the East China Sea region conducting daily patrols. At the same time, they encountered the same situation. Chapter 1580, 7 Blood. These warships with extremely powerful technology on the planet were like paper in front of those long-tailed humanoid creatures. The commander in black and white armor led the soldiers in cyan armor to quickly destroy these warships. There was no slaughter or fun, and they had no interest in anything on the warships. So after quickly destroying the warships and killing those soldiers, they flew back and reported to the 5 silver armors. The 5 silver armors looked at each other and communicated briefly in a whisper-like voice for a moment. Then, they turned into 5 silver streams of light and flew in different directions. Behind them, the black and white armors and the cyan armors followed closely. Among them, a force of nearly 100 people went straight to the Columbia Naval Base. The other forces went straight to the land in the northwest. East China Sea region. The intelligence department received reports from the warships around the Fog Valley, and they immediately entered a state of alert and notified the news to the top leaders. However, the Supreme Commander Li Guangxiao was sleeping soundly at this time. When the news was delivered to him, the guards just took a look and said, "Report the changes around Wugu to other senior officials first. The commander has just fallen asleep. Don't disturb his sweet dreams." Nothing is more important than the rest of the supreme commander of a region. Moreover, it has been 3 years since the end of the world, and news from Qingdao Wugu has been coming every once in a while, and they have long been accustomed to it. The most important thing is that Qingdao is still far away from here. Even if something unexpected happens, it will not affect Donghai City in a short time. The people in the intelligence department have no way to do it, although they understand that there is an extremely urgent situation there through the news from the warship. But in this place, being able to do things is never as important as being a person. If the Supreme Commander is unhappy, even if the matter is done well, it is hard to guarantee that he will not be liquidated in the future because of his left foot stepping through the door first. Therefore, this urgent information circulated among many senior officials, and there were always people on duty at night. But at that time, the creatures under the Fog Valley attacked too fast, and the warships only had time to send a piece of inadequate intelligence, so they did not take it too seriously. When the matter was repeatedly passed around by the top leaders and finally attracted the attention of a Navy Major General, a silver-armored man led hundreds of his men and had already landed on the distant sea level. The military radar of Donghai City can detect any large ships within 1,000 miles. However, the radar cannot achieve such a high degree of accuracy for such relatively small humanoid creatures. Late at night, the silver-armored man led his men to Donghai City. There were a large number of warships parked in the sea area, and the soldiers patrolled at night as usual. The city was like an indestructible fortress, and the walls were made of 7 or 8 meters thick reinforced concrete. The silver-armored man was suspended in the air, watching all this, as if he was admiring a sand pot built by a child. He flew slowly and calmly, just above Donghai City. His eyes swept across the entire city. Nowadays, Donghai City has brightly lit buildings at night due to the new energy. The areas where ordinary people live have long been turned off and fell asleep. But the areas where the rich and powerful live are still full of lights and feasting. Injia looked at all this, but just quietly suspended in the air. It seemed that he was just here to visit, and not for any other purpose. However, his distance was too close, just 500 meters above Donghai City. This distance was enough for the defense forces of Donghai City to find him and his subordinates. In an instant, the roar of guns and cannons sounded, and lines of fire shot from below, pointing directly at Injia and the troops behind him. Injia looked down, and he did not move at all. A blue-armored warrior instantly blocked the front, holding up an invisible barrier with his hands to block all the impact. Injia made such a sound in his throat, as if he was in a bad mood after being disturbed by someone. He no longer looked at the scenery in Donghai City, but flashed and fell towards the giant city wall that was tens of meters high. The ammunition bombarded him, but it could only splash a series of sparks and could not break his defense at all. Boom! He fell on the city wall like a cannonball. At this time, a large number of defense troops on the city wall had already rushed here. Although they didn't know who was coming, anyone who approached Donghai City without permission would be killed without mercy according to the law. Looking at the fully armed human warriors, Injia slowly raised his right hand. The next moment, the bodies of those human soldiers showed obvious changes, and they swelled up like balloons. Puff, 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 puff. One after another, the bodies of human warriors exploded in their combat uniforms, just like watermelons that suddenly burst after being exposed to the sun in summer. Blood slowly overflowed from the gaps in their clothes. The sticky scarlet blood seemed to have life, turning into strands of blood-colored lines and flying towards Injia. Fire! Fire! A squad leader shouted angrily, ordering all soldiers to fire at full speed. He knew that he had encountered a powerful alien. But so what? This is Donghai City, one of the most powerful regions in Huashu country. Any alien who dares to invade will be killed. Death. He has reported the situation here to the top leaders, and soon there will be more powerful aliens coming to support. Just as he roared and pulled the trigger, wishing to pour all the bullets on the silver-armored alien in an instant. Puff. His body exploded without any sign. Dull sounds rang out one after another, and within just a few seconds, hundreds of soldiers on the city wall died in this strange way. There was no sign. It just exploded suddenly. Then their blood turned into red silk threads and flew towards the silver-armored alien. The blood gathered in the palm of the silver armor and soon turned into a huge blood ball. The soldiers behind him, however, did not move, as if waiting for the performance of the commander. It must be said that the military literacy of the soldiers in the East China Sea region is indeed very high. Even in such a terrifying situation, no one retreated. Soon, a group of aliens in dark blue combat uniforms rushed to the battlefield. The Sea Dragon Force. An alien force exclusive to the East China Sea region. Who is this person who has the guts to go wild in Donghai City? Everyone today. A heroic and extraordinary stranger was about to give his speech, but before he could finish his words, his body exploded on the spot like any other ordinary soldier. Chapter 1588. Vulnerable. In the palm of the silver armor, more and more blood collected, and he compressed it into a small sphere, like a pearl. He walked carelessly on the tall city wall, strolling leisurely, braving the playful rain of bullets. In his eyes, There was no human warrior at all. Ordinary people, extraordinary people, or deputy captains with an ability index of 9,000 plus. As long as he walked by, the bodies of those people exploded without exception and finally turned into bloodlines. Because of the large number of deaths of human warriors, the red bloodlines almost intertwined into a dazzling net in the air and then slowly merged into the blood-colored pearls in his palm. Beep, beep, beep. In Donghai City, the piercing alarms sounded hurriedly. Everyone only realized at this time that there were enemies coming, but most people were confused at the first time. Donghai City is one of the most powerful cities in Huashu country. Even in the 3 years after the end of the world, no one has ever been able to fight here. They were used to peace. Although there were military exercises on a daily basis, there had never been an alarm as urgent as today. What happened? Is this an exercise in the middle of the night? No, this is not an exercise. Ordinary people hid in their homes, climbed to the window and looked at the sky outside, and could only see the light of the endless artillery fire in the distance. They could do nothing but pray silently in their hearts that the crisis would pass as soon as possible. But in the whole city, the army was busy. Various weapon systems began to be mobilized, and a large number of troops were ready overnight and rushed towards the city wall in the southeast direction. They did not allow anyone to invade Donghai City, and they must catch all the invading enemies in one fell swoop. But at this time on the city wall, the human soldiers were defeated. In front of the silver armor that was like a god descending to the earth, no one could stop him even for a moment. The human soldiers were almost desperate. It seemed that he had some kind of curse on him, which could easily take people's lives. Boom! An armed fighter plane flew over. The door of the fighter plane opened, and a young man in white combat uniform revealed his face. The moment they saw him, all the soldiers couldn't help but cheer. Because the one who came was none other than the White Tiger, one of the 4 spirits of Donghai City. The White Tiger stared down and saw the horrible corpses everywhere, as well as those creatures wearing strange armor and long tails, and frowned tightly. Those who offend Donghai City will die. As soon as he finished speaking, the whole person jumped down like a cannonball. His hands were already clasped in midair, and a powerful supernatural power condensed in his palms, and finally turned into a huge silver ball of light, which was aimed at Injia and blasted directly. Injia slowly raised his head and glanced at him. Puff! The White Tiger, who was highly expected by everyone, was still in midair and his body was directly blown into pieces. All the soldiers, even those who had been so determined to Donghai City, were almost collapsed at this moment. That was the top combat power of Donghai City. A powerful being with a supernatural power index of 9,700 points. He was killed instantly by the other party with just a glance. Injia seemed a little bored, and a dull voice came from his throat again, which was a language that no one knew. Destroy this place. After saying this, his eyes suddenly flashed with blue light. The eyes were strange, as if they were made of some transparent material. When the blue light flashed, his eyes looked around, as if looking for something. After a moment, he controlled the blood under his feet, turning it into a huge river of blood, and then carried him to the northwest of Donghai City. After Injia left, the black and white armor raised the strange-shaped weapon in his hand, which was similar to a sword, and swung it fiercely towards the front. Under the city wall where they were, human soldiers had gathered like ants. Among them were some powerful aliens. In the sky in the distance, missiles were aimed at them, bombing them accurately without blind spots. Kill them all. The black and white armor only issued such a simple order. After receiving the order, the group of soldiers in green armor behind him became excited instantly, and they scattered like flowers from heaven. Some soared into the air and directly tore the armed fighter planes into pieces with their sharp claws. Some fell to the ground among the human soldiers, took out 2 weapons similar to swords, and began to slaughter, like cutting melons and vegetables. Each of these alien warriors has a unique ability, but more green armor warriors chose the same method of slaughter. Behind them was a bulging thing, which seemed to be a tactical backpack on their backs, but the material was harder. They pressed the button on the side of the backpack, and a white, almost transparent tube popped out. They took the tube in their hands and aimed it at the fierce the soldiers rushed over. Without seeing them pull the trigger or anything like that, a light red beam of light shot out from the end of the white tube. Wherever the beam of light passed, silently, the bodies of more than a dozen human soldiers, which were tightly wrapped in combat uniforms, were directly melted with a big hole. The entire Donghai city was in chaos, and Li Guangxiao's guards did not dare to continue to stop the senior military officers who came to find Li Guangxiao. Li Guangxiao hurriedly got up and rushed to the command center in just pajamas. Looking at the weird people with extraordinary combat power in the surveillance, his brows were almost wrinkled into a ball. What are the origins of these guys? The world has never heard of such a force. Could it be that they are the troops secretly cultivated by Columbia? Someone immediately said, "Not them. These guys came from Qingdao because today, our patrol warships and Columbia's warships were all destroyed by them." Li Guangxiao's eyes suddenly widened, highlighting his cyan pupils. "You mean the underground creatures under Qingdao? They appeared." Li Guangxiao waved his hand. "Quick, notify Xuanwu and Qinglong immediately. Now, only they can deal with these underground creatures." Li Guangxiao didn't need to say more. Qinglong and Zhuke were on their way to support. As for Xuanwu, due to his huge body, he could only approach the senior Donghai city and show his huge body. The mysterious creatures in the fog valley of Qingdao. Is the gatekeeper of the underworld here too? Xuanwu's eyes were fixed on Donghai city. When he thought of the terrifying monster in the past, his heart was extremely heavy. If he were here too, could I resolve today's crisis? Chapter 1589. Contempt of the Superior Race. In a corner of Donghai city, the sound of fighting was already boiling, and the sky was full of fighter planes and flying shells. The Wugu warriors launched a brutal killing in Donghai city. Even the most ordinary Qingjiao warriors, the combat effectiveness they showed, has reached the level of human captains. What aliens, what elite warriors in front of them are just some stronger ants. On the contrary, at this time, it is fortunate that Donghai city has the top armed forces in the entire Huaxu kingdom. Various large-yield missiles, at this time, no longer care about accidental injuries and urgently launched a bombing of this area. In this way, they finally stopped their steps a little. However, even if they can stop ordinary Qingjiao warriors, no one can lock the position of the silver armor. He drove the Blood River and headed straight to the northwest. In that direction, Qinglong has changed into the posture of the fantasy beast species, weak water-glazed dragon god, with Suzaku riding on his back, and the two of them rushed to this direction urgently. Huh. The huge body of the dragon god cut through the sky and flew at a high speed. Zhuke had already fully deployed her fighting posture at this time. Her long black hair had turned into ice blue under the influence of her ability and flew backwards with the wind. She said to Qinglong, "It is said that the people who came are the mysterious creatures of the Mist Valley." Could it be because of that incident? Only the two of them understood the meaning of these words. The last time the Mist Valley rioted, she and Qinglong led the team to the Mist Valley. As a result, after entering the underground, Zhuke almost died in the battle. In the end, it was Qinglong who risked his life and rushed into the abyss to save everyone. In that battle, Qinglong obtained a portion of the Source of God. Perhaps it was at that time that he was targeted by the mysterious existence under the Mist Valley. Qinglong was silent for a moment and slowly said, "The Source of God is an extremely precious thing. I guess that they would not let us get it easily, but I didn't expect that it would trigger a war. If I had known that this would happen, I would rather not have gotten it." Zhuke shook his head, staring coldly at the artillery fire in the distance. "It's meaningless to say all this now. Now all the major forces in the world are competing for the Source of God and trying to create more Epsilon-level aliens. We did nothing wrong. We just didn't expect that the creatures in the underground world would attack human territory on a large scale." Suddenly, Qinglong's eyes condensed, and his huge body suddenly stopped in midair, curled up, and the dragon had stared at the front. "Someone is coming," he said in a deep voice. Zhuge raised his head and looked forward, only to see a huge blood river flying towards here from the horizon like red silk under the dark night. On the blood river stood a humanoid creature with silver armor, 4 or 5 meters tall, and a long and thick tail. The two were shocked. Now they can conclude that they are creatures from the mysterious civilization under the foggy valley. Zhu Chua's hands, a pair of specially made silver gloves, emerged with blue ice crystals. She was ready to fight and was ready to give the enemy a heavy blow at any time. Although she has not yet broken through that boundary with the special ability of Ice Flame, if the opponent is not careful, even Ypsilon will be affected. The first thing she did was not to attack, but to contact Xuanwu, who is far away in the sea. Xuanwu, the enemy has already reached Donghai City. Yinjia stopped in front of the two of them, looking at Qinglong's huge body with a very calm look. Although the size difference between the two is huge, the way Yinjia looks at Qinglong is like a giant looking down on a weak insect. Xuanwu's voice came, "When you land on land, my ability will be greatly limited. You should first try to find out more information about the opponent, and I will accumulate strength and support you with the Xuanguang cannon." Zhuge was also helpless in her heart, but she understood that the combat effectiveness of Xuanwu on the water and underwater was very different. After landing, Xuanwu's combat effectiveness was not much stronger than Qinglong. The most important thing is to test the opponent's strength and ability characteristics. Yinjia crossed his arms and did not look like he was going to attack. Under his mask, a grunting sound suddenly came out. The sound changed quickly, and after repeating it many times, it turned into the language of Huaxi country. "This language seems to be used by you." Qinglong and Zhuge were shocked. The other party was not only an intelligent creature, but also seemed to be a more advanced being than humans. He could master the human language so quickly. Qinglong asked in a deep voice, "Who are you? Why did you come to Donghai City, kill our people, and destroy our city?" Yinjia heard this and suddenly smiled faintly. He spread his right hand and said, "Oh, didn't you invade our Wulwan Empire first and disturb us many times? Moreover, you also killed our messenger." Qinglong didn't know how to respond for a while. Indeed, after they discovered the mysterious fog valley, all forces regarded it as a huge treasure. They even began to compete for its ownership. As for the mysterious biological group under the fog valley, no one had ever considered their ideas. Once it was discovered that it was a weak civilization, what would the consequences be? There is no doubt that it would be directly destroyed and then plundered all their resources. However, Qinglong is still, "We didn't kill your so-called messenger." Yinjia's tone was still slow and calm. "Don't get me wrong. I just think it's interesting that you weak beings have wisdom and civilization. And this is my first time communicating with your race, so I'm willing to talk to you a few more words. But in fact, I don't care about your words and thoughts at all. I just came here to destroy you." He raised his right hand and a ball of blood condensed in his palm. "You too have the breath of Wugu. I'll take you back and study you first." As soon as Yinjia finished speaking, Qinglong and Zhuge felt that their bodies were somewhat out of control at the same time. Their blood flow was accelerating rapidly, and under the influence of special energy, they wanted to break through their blood vessels and burst out. Qinglong roared, and his whole body burst into golden light. His body became almost transparent, like a piece of exquisite porcelain. And Zhuge also shouted delicately. Her long hair soared into the sky, and the blue ice flame instantly covered her whole body. The strange invading force was isolated outside the body by the two of them, temporarily avoiding the crisis of explosion and death. Chapter 1590, Mysterious Light Cannon. Qinglong and Zhuge burst out their powers, and with difficulty blocked the strange feeling of erosion. Yinjia let out a sigh, as if he was a little surprised by the strength of the two people in front of him. However, it was only a little. He raised his right hand, and a ball of blood gradually condensed in his palm, and then suddenly dozens of blood arrows burst out, and in an instant they crossed the air and shot in front of the two people. The speed of the blood arrows was so fast that the two had almost no time to react. Qinglong did not hesitate, and used his huge body to block Zhuge, and at the same time, the power of the weak water-glazed dragon god was activated. The space around his body twisted greasy, allowing all attacks on him to slide off the surface of his body. But this time, his powerful ability did not achieve the desired effect. The sharp and powerful blood arrows directly cut through his huge body, opening more than a dozen cuts on him. In an instant, the huge body of the weak water-glazed dragon god was full of red blood arrows. Roar! Qinglong let out a painful wail, and he felt that all the blood in his body was being quickly drawn out. After being promoted to the Ypsilon level, this was the first time he had endured such terrible damage. Qinglong! Zhuge shouted anxiously, and then quickly activated her ability. The sky was full of blue flames that spread out from her body, instantly wrapping Qinglong's whole body to dissolve those red blood arrows. However, this feeling was like using a candle to ignite and melt the eternal ice in the Arctic. The effect was not very obvious. Qinglong himself was also trying his best to resist. He suddenly burst out with golden superpowers and forced all the blood arrows out of his body. "Give up struggling. Your strength is too weak," Yinjia said indifferently. From beginning to end, he was only talking to Qinglong alone. As for Zhuge, he was directly ignored by him. Inhumans who were not at the Ypsilon level were not qualified to be taken seriously by him. Human eyes may be able to see ants, but who can observe bacteria? How could Qinglong be abducted willingly? His huge body was raised high, and a blazing light rose from his abdomen, then went up along his slender neck, and finally turned into a dazzling golden light, which rushed out from his mouth and instantly enveloped the space in front of him. The thick energy cannon penetrated everything in front of him, completely covering the body of Yinjia. The powerful energy illuminated the night sky of Donghai City. But after the light went out, what they saw in front of them was a sphere condensed completely from blood. Thick and round, like a huge blood-colored gem, it was not damaged at all by Qinglong's attack. The blood jade slowly opened a hole and turned into a hemispherical throne, holding up Yinjia. He stared at Qinglong. "My patience is limited, and the fun should be over." Qinglong and Zhuge were extremely desperate at this time. They finally realized how big the gap between the strength of the enemy in front of them and them was. At this moment, Zhuge looked up to the sky and roared, "Xuanwu!" Outside Donghai City, in the offshore area, the sea waves were surging, and the sea level rose by nearly 100 meters, as if it could dive down at any time and submerge the entire Donghai City. In the terrifying dark waves, Xuanwu's huge body was suspended like a fierce beast from ancient times. His eyes were fixed on the silver armor, who was confronting Qinglong and Zhuge in the city, and then he slowly opened his huge mouth. Charge completed. Shuangguang Cannon. Fire. From his huge mouth, a dark light was fired in an instant, like a sword piercing through the sky and earth, and it came behind Yinjia in an instant. Yinjia turned around and faced this obviously more powerful force, slowly raised an arm to resist. The long river of blood turned into a huge semicircular shield blocking him. Boom! The black light cannon collided with the bloody shield, making a shocking sound. Yinjia's face was extremely calm at this time, but in the next moment his face finally changed a little, because his blood shield actually had a crack. Crack. The blood shield suddenly shattered, and the Shuangguang cannon directly hit Yinjia's body, completely wrapping up his entire body. A black sun, with Yinjia as the center, exploded and rose in the center of Donghai City. Qinglong and Zhuge had already retreated to a safe range. The black sun engulfed the land within a radius of more than 10 kilometers and destroyed everything here. Qinglong and Zhuge were very sad, because this attack inevitably led to the death of a large number of Donghai City residents. But now they have no better choice. If they don't defeat the invading enemy as soon as possible, then the entire Donghai City will definitely have more deaths. It will be completely destroyed by the powerful power of the mysterious civilization of Wugu. Everyone understands how cruel this battle is. The other party is not human, so they will not pity ordinary people. Even if they kill everyone, they will not feel the slightest guilt in their hearts. This is a war between races, and it has always been a life-and-death struggle. The attention of Qinglong, Xuanwu, and Zhuge, all his attention was focused on that huge pit. The attack just now was a fatal blow that Xuanwu had condensed his strength. If it could not have an effect on Yinjia, the consequences would be very troublesome. After a long time, the aftermath of the explosion dissipated, and a huge hemispherical pit appeared on the ground. Yinjia's body finally appeared. He slowly rose into the air. The silver armor on his body was deformed, and the whole person looked a little embarrassed. Although the Shuangguang cannon did not kill him, this attack did work. Yinjia turned his head and looked at the Xuanwu undulating in the sea tide outside Donghai city. His eyes showed a solemn look. Even if he had sufficient confidence in his own strength, adults would also be at risk of injury when facing children holding sharp blades. It's just that he didn't understand that the strength of the sea monster he felt should not have hurt him. Is it a special weapon? He murmured to himself. Zhuge saw Yinjia's state. Although he was affected to some extent, his actions were not hindered. She gritted her teeth and said to Xuanwu, "Continue to launch the Tianwei weapons." As the region with the top armed forces in Huashu country, the East China Sea region not only has powerful aliens, but their armed forces are also extremely powerful. 3 years after the end of the world, the emergence of aliens has eclipsed the armed forces that once maintained the order of the world. However, aliens are constantly evolving, so for such powerful and uncontrollable existences as aliens, human research on weapons is also constantly advancing. Tianwei weapons are super powerful weapons specially developed for Epsilon-level aliens. It can also be understood that this is a love-death god with a shorter distance and a smaller coverage area.